So hey guys, in writing news, I have decided to take a break from the project I was working on for the last 2 weeks. Um, it was a Blue Moon project that, while I was working on the short story, I had reached a point where I felt that it could potentially be split into two parts. And while I was waffling on that decision, I decided I should work on something else. Because originally the idea I was working on was intended to be a one shot, but when I was starting to work on the first couple of pages, I realized that I wasn't really happy with the original concept as it stood. I tweaked the framework a little bit and expanded it, and it kind of started looking like maybe it should be, given how involved it was, that it might end up being a two-part story. For one reason or another, it's usually been very difficult for me to do one-shot short stories or one and dones because a lot of the times something will come to me or I'll want to take the story in a certain direction, and it feels like it should be, I guess, more than one piece. Because with single shot stories, they can only go so far. It's the larger the idea becomes, the more likely it turns into a multi-part story or a novella or something larger than that. And most of these projects are all short stories or sections of larger pieces. But in this particular case, it was supposed to be a one shot that's so far I'm going back and forth on whether or not it's going to be a longer short story or if it's going to be two parts. But in the meantime, I have decided to switch gears and start on the first of what potentially will be a series of stories that is going to be an eventual anthology that I would like to release that is also set in the Blue Moon universe, because it's kind of an idea that I've been toying around with for a while, but never explicitly nailed down any details beyond the general, because I've contemplated the origin of the various were species, how long they've been around, and I kind of had the idea that the were species have been existing with human society pretty much for as long as humans have been around, and for the most part, they've stayed under the radar. But at various points in our history, they've interacted with us in different ways that we either were or were not aware of. And I kind of wanted to touch on some of these different time periods that would never fit in the normal continuity. So, I'll probably make an announcement about this at some point in the future, but at least for right now, the first project that I'm working on was kind of the one that just I think I had finished the notes for first and had kind of appealed to me the most as one of those interesting ideas that seemed like it could be a little fun to play around with, because it's called Blood Moon Rising, and it's about a werewolf cowboy, which is something I never thought I would have in the same sentence. But it's so far I'm having fun with it. It's kind of been interesting writing the dialogue for it because I usually don't have characters talking like that. But it's going to be one of two stories based on this character, and right now the the game plan is to have 10 pieces and 5 different time periods, which I will get into in more detail some other time. But that's what I'm working on for right now until I either finish what I'm working on or make a decision on the other one or jump to one of the other various projects that I have sitting around. And the next couple of big things are its convention plans. Obviously, COVID-19 has thrown everybody's convention plans this year into a blender, and so far, at least, it hadn't affected Drag and myself until now, because we had just TFF had just escaped before all of the alarm bells started going off. So it was about a week after we came back from Texas for a Fiesta where everything started talking about shutting things down, about not having large events, and needless to say, this is going to affect conventions. Well, I was kind of hoping that things would be back to normal-ish by the time that Star Trek Las Vegas rolled around, but with what's going on, they have relocated the dates to December. Now, of course, this affects our convention plans because had COVID not happened, we would have been at Star Trek Las Vegas in August, and we would have been at FurFest for one final FurFest in December. Now, since the two dates are not necessarily a conflict, but it does present what would be, I guess, a little bit of a logistical difficulty for us, because the dates for Star Trek Las Vegas are now the weekend after Midwest FurFest. So if we were to go to Midwest FurFest, we would be leaving and either flying back home or flying straight to Vegas and going to do a Star Trek con for another week. Now, although we haven't made any solid decisions yet, here's kind of where we're standing at the moment, because Star Trek Las Vegas, we went in 2018. We had a lot of fun and we really planned to go back, but the problem in 2019 was that we had a date conflict. 2019, BronyCon fell on the exact same weekend, so we had to make a judgment call. Because BronyCon was going to be the last BronyCon, we decided to go to that for a couple of reasons. Not only was it the last BronyCon, but I had a lot of fun the first time. I wanted to room with Dan and with Pi and a couple of other folks again, and Richard Renard was able to join us this last year, and it was everything I hoped it would be. I spent a lot more time on the concrete floor than I thought I was going to, and I kind of wish I'd transitioned before I went, but I can't change the decisions I've made. But at the time, I wasn't in transition mode yet. I wasn't thinking in that direction, and I hadn't asked myself those questions back then. But anyhow, we went to BronyCon because it seemed like the best decision at the time, and I'm happy with that I went, but it still was one of those things where it was a tough decision, but it seemed like it was the only decision. And with what's going on right now, we had planned to go back to FurFest for one final convention. Originally, last year was going to be our last FurFest because of two major problems. We had spent 3 hours on the Reg line in 2019, and it was a problem for a lot of people, for health, for comfort, for safety, for other things. I mean, 3 hours on a Reg line where you can't leave, it's a problem. And while it wasn't a deal breaker, it certainly wasn't how I wanted to spend 3 hours of my evening. And additionally, I should also say that the other thing was that the traffic patterns of the convention made it very difficult to navigate, especially with a person that has difficulty seeing. And when I'm in fursuit, it's kind of hard for me to be handler, camera person, and have fun fursuiting all at the same time. And it's tricky without somebody that can see to help us, especially when it's a certain level of busy. But this last year, two of those problems, those two major issues, were alleviated because we were able to use the disability access line, thanks to Maggie Holt for making me think of asking about that, because I had never thought about asking about it before, I guess because I didn't think about Shrag's disability in that way, but also just because it had never occurred to me to ask. And the other thing was that they moved the dealer's room to a different place, which seemed to resolve a lot of the crowding issues, so it was a lot less complicated this last year. And also, particularly when it came to the point where it might be potentially the only time that I get to see Angel and Northpaw, I was thinking I wasn't ready to make that decision yet, because I think that's the only convention that they go to, and it's kind of difficult for us to see each other. Seeing people I care about, I guess, is one of the harder things about everybody living in different places. I don't live near anybody that I really would like to see on a more regular basis. Ideally, I would like us all to live within a couple hours drive or something, so that I could see Angel and Dan Raccoon and Richard Renard and Pepster and a few other people a lot more often than I do. And FurFest, unfortunately, for a few things, FurFest has been getting bigger. A lot of the people that I like to see there have been going away from the con for one reason or another, and it's just been becoming less appealing to continue going. But the problem that we've run into in particular is just the fact that with FurFest, and I hesitate to mention somebody else's personal business, but let's just say that Angel and Northpaw may not necessarily be in attendance this year, and especially if that's the case, it would make it extremely impossible for us to attend. But furthermore to that, if, as things stand now, if we were to do FurFest and Star Trek right next to each other, that would be 12 days. That would be away from home in a row, and it would be very difficult to leave the cats for that long. Uh, Also, it would also be problematic in that we would be, at least with the last time, because BronyCon and Star Trek Las Vegas, I only brought the one light fursuit, so we had a lot of empty space for our souvenirs. When we go to FurryCons, our luggage is always packed to capacity, and it would be very difficult to go to a FurryCon and then go straight to Star Trek Las Vegas before coming home. If we did that con, came home, and then did Star Trek Las Vegas to drop off our stuff and do a switch out, it would still be logistically complicated, and all things considered, at least as far as how it's looking right now, I think that for us it would just be plausible to just forego a FurryCon this year, and hopefully things will be back to normal next year, and we can do two FurryCons and a Star Trek Con or PonyCon or whatever else we end up doing in years following. But it looks like, at least for 2020, I would be very surprised if we do another FurryCon, just because of the logistics involved. So, while I'm not saying that we're not going to be at FurFest just yet, that's how it's looking. It's looking like, if given the choice right now, Greg and I have discussed it, and it's highly likely that we will probably be going to Star Trek Las Vegas. And, of course, obviously I would regret not seeing folks and, not having a chance to suit, but it might perhaps be the best thing. And it would also give me an opportunity to go to Star Trek Las Vegas again and to kind of reevaluate a couple of things that I think I need to think about. But insofar as that's going, right now it's looking like Star Trek Las Vegas will be in December, and it will be at a different venue than the Rio All Suites, which kind of disappoints me a little bit because I really like the Rio All Suites, but I don't think there's such a thing as a Las Vegas hotel. So, I mean, I imagine wherever we end up with, it'll be a comparable experience, but I still do like the previous venue. But I guess whatever weekend they found to reschedule the convention, it has, it just probably wasn't available that time period. But that being said, I will be getting in contact with Tsuki and with Scully about the new dates. I know I've mentioned it to them, but I will be keeping in contact and monitoring the situation as it develops. Also, as a kind of random thing, Netflix has recently put on the English dub of Cardcaptors, which I've always wanted to see the whole series, but back in the day they didn't have the whole series on television. When I first saw it, and I think I was in maybe junior high when I first became aware of this series, the dub left out a lot of episodes, which I didn't realize at the time, since I was so young and didn't understand how these sorts of things worked, that anime, particularly in those periods, they would cut out certain episodes, particularly in cases where they thought it would make the series play better on American television, or to get rid of certain things that they wanted to censor, homosexual relationship being one of the things that they removed from Cardcaptors. And the other thing was also they took out at least the first 6 episodes because they thought Cardcaptor Sakura got more interesting when Lee Showron showed up. So, they cut out 39, I think, or 31 or 39 of the 70 episodes of the series. So that was almost half of it. And it seems bizarre. I mean, even though it's one of those series where a lot of them are, I guess you would call the Monster of the Week, it still seems odd to me that they would cut out so much of the series. But that being said, Cardcaptors is on Netflix right now, so if you have Netflix and you're a fan of the series, it's a good opportunity to check it out. And I guess the last thing that I want to mention is, given all that's going on in the world, I want to say that I hope that everybody's staying safe, and that I definitely, I want to say that I think that there's a lot of things in the police system that need to be fixed right now, and I think the police are called on a lot of things that they don't need to be, and maybe it's just a question of resource mismanagement. But I mean, a lot of the things I've been seeing on the news lately has been very disturbing, and I know that for some people this is a reality that's been going on for a long time. So, I don't have a large audience, and I don't really necessarily know if I'm the most qualified person to speak on these kinds of topics. But I faced discrimination in the past because of my race, and I know that there's a lot going on there that I have the privilege of not being affected by. So, I want to say that I do support Black Lives Matter, and I want to say that I hope that this results in some positive change. And, I don't want to be one of those people that just says, I only want to talk about furry stuff, or I only want to promote myself, because I feel that as creatives that we have a responsibility to support and promote causes that we think are important. And I think that it's important that, it starts at all levels, that even if all you do is say Black Lives Matter once, that you do that, because I think it matters. Like, people might say that, you know, what difference does it make if I say something or not? Well, it does make a difference. It's like, just for example, think of any decision, any vote, any scenario in the past where what you do has been affected by one person saying, I like this instead of that. Even if it's something as mundane as what to get on your pizza. It's, you know, single choices, single voices do make a difference. And I think it's important that we acknowledge that we face that. And if, I've become aware in recent weeks of a lot of things that people say that I have said in the past that, at the time I wasn't aware enough to realize that these things are, in a sense, just ignoring the problem. Things like I don't see color. Because, well, on the one hand, I guess people might think that that means that you think that you're not being racist, but at the same time, maybe it's just you ignoring the problem, because what people are, it identifies them. It makes them different from everybody else. It's part of who they are. It's like, I don't know, could you say, I guess it's like saying you don't see gender, and then, you can't deny that men and women are different, that men and women get treated differently, act differently, behave differently, that you being a man or a woman doesn't affect who you are. And, I don't see food flavors. It's like, surely you don't treat all foods equally. You wouldn't do the same thing to every kind of food item. And maybe that's, I don't know if that's stupid or something, but it seems like it's something to be aware of if these are things that you think and have never really examined them before. Maybe it doesn't change a whole lot in terms of your life or your perspective, but just think about these things sometimes. Like, Black Lives Matter. Like, if you're saying and all lives matter in response to that, it's minimizing what they're trying to say, and that's not fair. It's I've seen a lot of comics and cartoons that kind of illustrate how that makes a difference. For like, if one house is on fire, you're not saying that other houses don't matter, but this particular house that's on fire is the one that needs the attention right now, because this is where the problem is. And I think that's what you need to bear in mind when you're thinking, saying Black Lives Matter, because it's like they are the ones that are being marginalized, that are being treated this way, that are under this condition that doesn't affect a lot of other people. And I think it's important that even if it doesn't affect you, that you at least acknowledge it, that you support them, that you do what you can to help. Because, I'm kind of reminded of those sayings that it's like, even if it doesn't affect you, it may affect someone you care about, and just because it doesn't affect you now doesn't mean that it won't affect you later. So, you know, um, I guess that's it for right now. I hope that's meant something to you. I hope that means something to somebody that might just be watching this out of randomness. And I mean, I hope I'm doing something to help rather than getting in the way. So that's it for right now. So I hope you guys have a good weekend, and hopefully I'll have some good news in a couple of weeks. Talk to you later.
Thanks for watching, and if you liked it, click the subscribe button and leave a comment below. You can also find me on Twitter and a few other places on the web, or support me via Patreon or Ko-fi. Zebra hugs!